everyone, welcome to Coats and Jackets, and today I wanted to talk to you about Dracula. So I have a Dracula book collection, and it started the way all of my book collections started, which is entirely by accident. We're getting close to Halloween now, so I thought it might be a really interesting thing to take you through some of these editions. This was the first edition of Bram Stoker's Dracula that I ever owned. I had already read a little bit of poetry associated with vampires and with Dracula, and I had already seen a lot of the movies, based on this, but I never actually read the book. So in high school, I picked this up. This was my only copy of Dracula until, I want to say just a few years ago, actually. Probably about 6-ish years ago now. I picked up my second copy of Dracula, which is this. And even though I already owned a copy of Dracula, I picked this one up because it was so beautiful. It was just so beautiful. This cover is actually in a very soft fabric leather-like material. It's embossed. It has little red like filigree on it. It's so beautiful. And look at these end pages. I'm like obsessed with beautiful end pages. There's also little bats on the corner of each page. This really is just the most beautiful edition. And I could not resist it. So this was my second copy of Dracula, and it's just because I so happened to come across it at the bookstore. Which leads me to this. This is not an official edition of Dracula. This I picked up before my second copy of Dracula, but it does deal with Dracula. This is an anthology. I got it secondhand while I was in university, and it has a bunch of different authors writing short stories about Dracula or set in his universe. It's pretty fascinating. There's a few little like different drawings here and there that relate to some of the stories. And the first two copies I showed you are the only copies of Dracula I ever actually purchased at a store. The rest of these were secondhand, either at thrift stores or flea markets. The next issues, I should say books, dealing with Dracula that I found were these. This is Little Pet Shop of Horrors. This is a manga series. This is not an adaptation or a straight adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, but this is about Dracula specifically. Each book has a series of short stories. It's all by the same author, and it follows the life of Dracula as he's reinvented himself in this particular town, and he's fallen in love with this particular cop. You're learning slowly that Dracula's maybe not such a bad guy, but he knows a lot about paranormal, and so the cop thinks that he's behind some of these weird occurrences, even though he's not really. And the two have a really interesting relationship. There's a lot of short sort of mini horror stories that happen. It's really interesting, and I'd love to get the rest of these. The next few Dracula books I all got this past year. So I got all the rest of these fairly close together. First I found this one. This was also at the thrift store. This is a beautiful illustrated edition, and I mean just beautiful. It is a straight comic adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Art style is very sort of pulp fiction style art. It evokes older movies and like old movie posters and stuff when you look at it. It's very painterly in style. It is absolutely different and beautiful, and it also kind of puts you in mind of some of the older Hammer films. Some of the work in this is just so gorgeous. This was published by Ballantine and Del Rey Books in 2005. The artist is Fernando Fernandez. I tried to look up and see if there were any colorists or letterers mentioned, and I don't seem to see anything here. It says was originally published in hardcover in the United States in 1984. So yeah, this is a copy that if you can find, I would highly recommend. The next one I found at a flea market, and this is a really fun little one. This is an illustrated Dracula from a kids' horror classics library, and it's illustrated by Tom Barling. This was published by Today Press, and it is also a straight adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. All of the pages are very colorful, very cartoonish in style. Again, I don't see anything here about a specific colorist or anything for these. A lot of these images, colorists tend to go uncredited, but they add so much to a book. Just the style and feel of it. So I really wish I knew who some of these people were. This is one where the spine had actually dropped and had been re-glued and repaired slightly incorrectly, but I don't mind that. One really cool thing is that this was a gift to somebody in 1981 because there's an inscription inside. I always love getting old books and seeing things like that to sort of see what their life was. Next three were all thrift store finds I made on the same day. This one is a coloring book, not colored in yet. This is a brand new book, but I got it for nothing because it was at the thrift store. It's a wonderful adaptation. It actually does have a bunch of the letters and some of the text in it. It's not the full adaptation, but it does give sort of an abridged, sort of short interpretation. It's really neat the way it's laid out. I mean, I'm probably never going to color it myself. I just thought it was so cool. And I can't believe it was actually a coloring book adaptation. The next one was another graphic novel adaptation. This one by Sterling Press, and it was made for kids again. It says it's #1, but I think this is the only volume because I've read through this and it is the entire story of Dracula adapted. So if there are more volumes, I would assume they're of other types of horror stories, because it does say it's part of a series of adaptations for children. So it has a very different art style from some of the other editions we've looked at. It's a much more contemporary children's style that you see in a lot of newer animations, but it's a lot of fun. It's a good read. Like, I don't know, I just get such a kick out of this scene. This scene in particular, I just think it's absolutely hilarious. I love it. My very last adaptation is this very small children's book, and it's like the little golden book of horror, basically. It's quite short, but it is full text. It's essentially the story at its core. There's a couple of little drawings in here, I think, if I'm remembering this correctly. Yeah, there's a few different little drawings, and they're pretty detailed little pen and ink drawings. It's just such a cool little book. I'd like to get the other ones in the series. There's also Frankenstein, The Hound of the Baskervilles, The Hunchback, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and The Pit and the Pendulum. And I love different Edgar Allan Poe adaptations, so I would love to see what The Pit and the Pendulum looked like. In total, I've got 10 copies of books about Dracula, and a few of them are Bram Stoker adaptations, and some are all new stories. I hope you enjoyed this quick look at my collection right before Halloween. And if you have any interesting adaptations of this or other similar paranormal tales or horror classics, let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.